Good morning, everyone. Get out of here, Flash. So, what we have in front of us is a completely reassembled and rehab valve body out of my 48 RE. This was not hard. It was stressful because I wanted to make sure I got it back together correctly. But it wasn't. I think you need on a scale of 1 to 10, I think you need a skill level of about a 7, mechanic-wise. On a scale of 1 to 10 on a brain in your head, you gotta have a 10. On a scale of 1 to 10 on a common sense, you gotta have a 10. I posted a quick video yesterday of the parts laid out here. And that is absolutely imperative. I can't stress enough about that. Yesterday I had thought I lost one of my valves in the valve body. Turns out that the instructions were not clear, and I ended up getting that cleared up and figuring out the shift valves. But I just want to make sure that you know that you should absolutely get over here, take pictures, sort all of your hardware, sort all of your plates, the valves, the springs. The kit comes with a bunch of new springs, a lot of new things, and you end up discarding things. It's easy to confuse leftover springs with the other springs. So you gotta have a little common sense, and at the end of it, you're going to end up with 2 screws you're not going to use if you're going to upgrade to the GM style governor solenoid. So you get 2 pieces of hardware left over and a bunch of springs. And this is the old I don't remember what it's called. I have to look into the instructions. But basically, the parking ball goes in here, and this selector valve, whatever it's called. But like I said, I'll probably link the video that I watched to get this thing back together, because it was really informative. Again, it's pouring rain right now. I just walked out here in the garage and set the camera up, and it's raining a little lighter than it was 5 minutes ago, but it was just coming down in sheets. So I'm not getting out of the truck today. It's, again, water dripping in my eyes, on my back, in the mud, on the wet concrete. This just doesn't sound like fun to me. But you gotta take some common sense into account for all of this, because if you don't, you're gonna be in for a really bad time. This is not for the faint of heart, and the gentleman in the video that I watched, I think his name is Hiram or Figaro or something like that. He has a transmission channel, and like I said yesterday, the guy in the video is piling all of his screws in one place. Well, I can't do that. I don't rebuild valve bodies ever. This is my first valve body rebuild, so I'm not going to put all my screws in one pile. So that's just that. I'm not doing it. I'm going to sort my hardware. As an aircraft mechanic in the Air Force, whenever you took a part off an airplane, we had little parts bags with a tag on it, and you could write on that tag. And you took that hardware off, you put it in the bag, you wrote what it was, and you attached it to that part, and you set that part aside. And then if you weren't the person going to put that back on, the next person could walk up and say, here's this part, here's this hardware. And if the hardware was no good, usually we would either write replace hardware on that little tag, or we'd go through the trouble of being a decent human being and going to the bench stock and getting new hardware to put in that bag. That wasn't always the case depending on time and workload, but at least that person knew either there was new hardware, the hardware was serviceable, or they needed to replace it. You weren't leaving someone in the lurch. And I will tell you, in this case, don't leave yourself in the lurch. Don't just throw a bunch of stuff over here and hope that these instructions are decent. These are not 100%. There is an error on this page right here for this valve. This shows an incorrect valve that is not in this valve body. And I actually freaked out a little bit thinking that I had dropped or lost that valve, or it wasn't even in there. I'm taking it apart methodically, and I laid it all out, and I knew I wasn't having a trans-ischemic attack, or what they call a senior moment. I knew that valve came out of this valve body, but according to these instructions, I didn't have that valve. So make sure that you're ever vigilant on your hardware removal and cataloging. I'm sorry. There's one extra Torlon check ball that you also don't put back in there. They call it a cherry bomb, which you replace that with. But overall, it took me most of the day. I will not say by any stretch of the imagination that I was able to pull it apart and just magically put it back together. I sat in this chair yesterday for more than 4 hours making sure that this thing came apart. I got it clean. I put it in acetone. And as I put it back together, I used WD-40 as the gentleman in the video recommended, just to have lubrication inside the valve body. There'll be transmission fluid in there, but there's going to be air and getting things worked around. You don't want dry metal on dry metal. But yeah, overall, you could see how nasty the parts were coming apart. And when I had this valve body comes off in 3 pieces, so when I had it apart and I had everything laid out over here and the valve bodies were empty, I went and scrubbed them as best I could, washed them in the acetone. And I don't know if it's just the brake and parts cleaner, but if you only use brake and parts cleaner, there seems to be, maybe there's a water component, or the transmission had water in it. Excuse me. But I kept seeing the water droplets on things. So when I got it apart, I didn't notice any water separated from the transmission fluid necessarily, but there might have been water in the valve body when I took it apart. But as I took things apart that held fluid, it ran out chocolate brown. The transmission fluid was in terrible condition. There in the video you'll see, I'll go ahead and link it definitely. In the video there's a filter inside of here. It's a little tiny filter. And it says, and the guy mentions that you need to replace it if it's packed full of clutch material. Mine was completely clear, so either it's a newer filter and someone had been in this valve body before, and again, I'm not a transmission professional, so I don't know that for sure, or no one ever changed the transmission fluid and the transmission's really not in that bad a shape. So when I get this back together and I get it down the road, I'll know that for sure. But yeah, it's that little filter being clogged full is a telltale marker for bad clutches or a ton of clutch material getting let loose. But there was also a lot, my hands were like turned black from working metal. Again, I think there was a lot of, everything had a coating. If you ever take like the transmission pan, when you take your transmission pan, when you service your transmission, there's like a black film on the silver insides of that pan. That was all over everything. Both of my hands were absolutely black yesterday. And the acetone, I was able to clean that up with the acetone pretty well. So make sure that there's a gentleman I watch, I don't remember this channel's name because I don't watch it very often. He's an AMSOIL guy that does the transmission servicing and talks about AMSOIL a lot. And I'm a fan of AMSOIL. I probably won't run AMSOIL in this transmission because it's 200,000 miles and it may or may not make a difference at this point, because I could get this in there and the transmission's bad and I got to pull the transmission anyway. But he talks about a dirt load inside of your transmission. So people talk about flushing their transmission at like an oil change place where they hook the machine up to your cooler lines, but they don't actually drop your pan. You're not doing yourself any good. Yeah, you got fresh fluid in there, but you didn't remove the trash that's in there, so that trash can still get picked up and spun around, and if your filter's clogged or whatever, you can be starving your transmission. So dropping the pan and pulling the valve body and getting it completely cleaned out, getting all those nooks and crannies, and I used a gallon of acetone in a tub over there, and it cleaned up pretty well. There was a lot of trash in it. I didn't use all the acetone. It didn't evaporate. It doesn't evaporate that fast. I actually put it right back in the gallon jug I got it from. But he talks about pulling the dirt load from your transmission when you do a service. Don't just don't just run fluid through it thinking you're getting it done. You got to change your transmission. You got to change your transmission filters. Again, I talked about it in another video. Don't ever listen to any manufacturer that tells you that you can run anything for 100,000 miles. I don't care how good of fluid they say it is. It's been my experience that if someone tells you that you can run your oil until the oil meter says it's bad, they're going to sell you another motor, is what they're trying to do. A friend of mine bought a Chevy truck, had it he lost his motor at 40,000 miles, and he, being a decent mechanic, not a professional mechanic, but a decent mechanic, directly attributed to the fact that his oil meter, his percentage on his truck, told him when to change it, and that's when he changed it, and he dropped his motor. He spun a bearing. Could have been a bad build. It could have been an oil meter and him running 20,000 mile oil changes with no upgraded filtration. I don't know, but don't do that. Just change your oil. It's cheap insurance to change oil. What does it cost you? $40 every 3 months. If you're going to run a car, change your oil, change your fluid, service your trucks, your cars frequently. I don't like to put more than 30 to 50,000 miles, depending on what I'm doing with the vehicle, when it comes to, even if I'm running full synthetic, depending on what I'm doing with the truck. If I'm towing heavy, even if it's a manual transmission, if I'm towing heavy, I'll change it to 20,000 miles. I'll change it to 15,000 miles. If it's convenient for me to change it, because I'm not going to be doing anything with the truck that I could pull the shifter out of my old Dodge, drain the transmission, and then refill it right then, I'll do it. It's ahead of schedule. It doesn't matter. It's cheap insurance. I don't need to replace a transmission. It's cheaper just to do fluid, 15 to 20,000 miles. And with my old Dodge, I did tow heavy. I towed more than 20,000 pounds of that Dodge, and it did great. I never had a problem with the transmission. I blew the clutch out of it, but that's to be expected. The clutch is a wearing part, just like brakes or anything else. So take care of your truck. I don't know that this fluid is not the original fluid that they put in the truck, and someone had been topping it off for 200,000 miles. I hope that's not the case, but the condition of the fluid when I pulled this apart tells me that it had not been serviced recently, probably within the last 2 years, and that it had been run hard. Again, not an excessive amount of clutch material inside the filter here in the valve body, and dirty fluid. I'm going to service it, get it back together. When I drained it, it was serviced up to the normal level. It wasn't low on fluid, but it was just, had a little bit of a burnt smell to it. Not like horribly burnt, but burnt enough to make me want to change it. So in the next couple of days, I'll get it back together whenever this passes. Apparently there's a tropical depression or a tropical storm hitting Louisiana right now, and that's going to hit me here in Alabama in a matter of tomorrow or the next day. So I don't know if I'm rained out for the rest of the week, and I got to wait till the weekend to get this thing together. I just put the pan back under the transmission so I didn't have it leaking all over my driveway, and this can just sit here. I'm going to cover it with a towel so nothing gets on it. Away we go. I will show you this though. This is one of the towels. You can see this towel is pretty dirty, and then this one, the main towel, I actually threw it in the trash. It was so bad. The main towel that I had this thing sitting on overnight, it was horrible. The towel was black. There was no red at all, because I brought the valve body in after I pulled it, and I set it here on this table, and it turned dark black and brownish on the edges. There was no real red color to it. So hopefully my transmission isn't smoked and I can rehab this thing. I'm still waiting on my injector from Thoroughbred. I don't know when it's going to get here. I emailed this morning. In fact, I'll check that now because I just got an email in. The guy at Thoroughbred said, yes, your injector arrived on the 27th afternoon. I will check it today. So I should know if I got my injector coming back to me. And depending, I have a 10 by 10 awning I can put up. So if it's going to keep raining and the wind's not too crazy, I can at least put that up, raise the hood and put my injector in, adjust my valves and get that top end of the motor back together. So more to follow. Again, I'm not going to film putting the injector in. I'm not going to film the valve adjustment procedure. Again, that's all been, there's 50 different videos on that on YouTube already. So, but I am going to clean this mess up. I'm going to leave this under the towel. Actually, I'm going to spray it down with I'm going to spray the whole thing with WD-40 and put the towel back over it because it's so moist. I don't want any corrosion. I know it's a lot of aluminum in there, but I don't want any dry metal on dry metal or anything like that. So thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. Comment down below. We'll have a conversation about it all. You can tell me I'm crazy or I'm doing a great job or GFY, whatever you like. Do some internet stuff. Have a great day. Gotta walk around. I should get a remote for this.